let's go ahead and talk about the top part of this internal parts. So let's start in the upper left-hand corner right here. Did anybody find this one? What is this called? This box right here in the back. Power supply. Whoever said that's a genius. Okay, now it's interesting that computers like this one, so this would be kind of your basic Windows machine, and not necessarily, this is not necessarily what like a Macintosh or an Apple computer would look like, but the Windows machines have always kind of been modular, if you know what I mean. Meaning that, like, if your power supply goes up in smoke and won't work anymore, you don't have to replace the whole computer. You can just replace the power supply. You just pop it out of there, pop a new one in, turn it on, you're good to go. Right? So it's kind of interesting that they've kind of always been that way. So this next one right here, it's pointing down at that big square. Okay? CPU, which stands for, does anybody know? Central Processing Unit. Basically the brain of the computer. Everything the computer does goes through this one chip. Now, how many people found like heatsink or fan for that? I mean, you don't have to be shy. It's okay. Here's the reason why a lot of places online label that as a heatsink or a fan. Being the brain of the computer and that everything goes through the computer CPU, it gets hot. Okay? Computer chips hate to be hot. It will ruin them. So what they do is they slap a giant aluminum, because aluminum conducts heat really well, aluminum heat sink on there, and on top of that heat sink, they slap a fan. Usually a multiple speed fan, so it can go on low, medium, or high speed. And if you've ever heard a CPU fan on high speed, usually they scream. I mean, they're pretty loud. All right, so that pulls the heat out of the CPU, because if it gets too hot, it literally can go up in smoke. They're super fragile. All right, so heatsink and fans, not a bad answer. It's just not the best answer, because the reason why they're there is because that CPU is underneath them. All right. So this next one right here, this is kind of science fiction-y, but it really is what they call it? Motherboard, right. So by science fiction-y, I mean, you know, like the mothership, you get all the aliens go dock with the mothership, whatever. It's the same kind of concept though. The motherboard is a bunch of connectors, specialized connectors, that allow you to plug all the parts of a computer in together so that they can communicate with each other and work together. Okay, sometimes they call this the main board, which may actually be a more technical term for it. So if you heard something like main board, that's what they're talking about. Or motherboard, lots of people call it the motherboard. So it could be either one of those. So these three down the left here, or to the right, sorry. These three down the right. Okay, these are a little bit sketchy, and this is where a lot of computers get to be really, really different. Because not all computers have all of these, but some computers have more than this. All right, so this top one, who found this one on the top here? It is an optical drive. Now, who needs me to explain what an optical drive is? That's a good term for it, but we usually call it either a CD-ROM drive or a DVD drive or a Blu-ray drive. All three of those are optical drives because they use optics and lasers to read the disk. That's why they call them optical drives. Okay, other disk technologies use magnetics to write and read the disk, and some of them actually use, you know, like a memory matrix, like your flash drives or an SSD drive. But those optical drives could be anything like CD, DVD, or Blu-ray. Now, if you had like CD or DVD, just leave it. You don't have to put optical drive. It's fine. I get it. They're all the same. Okay. Now, this one is kind of rare these days, but I leave it in here because it's still kind of a little bit interesting. Did anybody find out what this one is with a little bay on the front? Like the little slot. So this is a floppy drive, which we don't use much anymore, but I have some examples back here. These are kind of interesting. So here's probably the most recent version of the floppy disk. There's 3 of them, right? So this is what they call the 3.5-inch floppy. So this is probably 90s tech, maybe early or late 80s tech. Before that, they actually used this 5.25-inch style floppy, which, yeah, these are pretty old. These were super duper fragile. Like, you could ruin these just by touching them in the wrong place, and then all of your data was just gone. Okay, and I even have one that's older than that. Here's an 8-inch floppy. It's probably from like the 60s and 70s. Okay, which is pretty rare. This fact that this is the only one I've ever actually seen. It actually has an operating system on it for an Apple, probably an Apple IIe. So crazy, 8-inch floppy. Kind of interesting. I don't know if you want to look at them. They're back here. So anyways, this next one, he said it over here already. It's a hard drive. So there's 2 kinds that this could be. So there's a hard disk drive, they call them now. Right, which is, they're still being used. Every computer in here has a hard disk drive in it. The big dilemma is this disks have to spin at like 7,000 RPMs, right, which is pretty quick. And then these heads have to slide back and forth. So with all these moving parts, these did go down. And when they had a catastrophic failure, every bit of data on this is just gone, okay, which is a disaster. I mean, like your operating system, everything. Your computer won't even start up anymore. It's dead, okay? So they've been switching recently to what they call solid state drives. I have an M2 one in my machine at home that's a 1 terabyte, and it's this size, and it just bolts right onto your motherboard. Like, you can't even see it. It's like I don't even have a drive. It's super awesome. These are about, what would you say, like 10 or 15 times faster than a than a disk drive, a hard disk drive. So it's like when I start up my computer at home and I log in, I can't log in fast enough. Like, it's already ready to go. As soon as I hit enter, it's ready to go. And if you compare that with, like logging into a computer here, how long does it take for it to build your account? Yeah, and then even after you get in, you still can't open anything for a few more minutes, right? Because it's still rolling that login. Mine's like, because of the solid state drive, it's instant. Like, as soon as I hit enter, it's ready to roll. They're actually pretty impressive, but they're not cheap. Okay, so how about this one right here? This one, the arrow is pointing at kind of a weird place, but what did you find for that one? Okay, the memory said, what kind of memory? There's different kinds of memory. You're right. This is RAM. They are memory, so you're both right. So RAM is called random access memory is the name for that. Now, random access memory is super fast. All computers need it. This is basically your short-term memory. This is the stuff, if everything your computer's working on right now is loaded into RAM. The big problem with RAM is it's what they call volatile memory. Okay? Volatile memory means that if it loses power, all the information that's stored in it disappears. Because it's volatile memory, that's why if your computer turns off or you shut it down, when you start it up again, you have to wait for it to boot back up into Windows. You literally have to wait for it to load Windows off of the hard drive, which is the long-term storage, into RAM, which is the short-term storage, so that the computer can actually use it. Everything the computer is working on right now must be in RAM. Generally speaking, if you want a computer to work better or faster, if you update the RAM or increase the amount of RAM, it makes a huge difference. Next one down here. This one was pretty hard to find. Anybody find this one? Good answer for that one. Okay, you're right. There's a better term for it, though. The BIOS. Okay, CMOS is a specific type of BIOS. BIOS stands for the basic input-output system. Okay, and if you compare it to like a person or a human, the BIOS would be like the computer's instinct. Okay, you have to understand when a computer is turned on, it is so stupid that it doesn't even know it's a computer. Like, it has no clue. So as the motherboard gets powered up from the power supply, it automatically throws power down to this BIOS chip, and the BIOS takes over. And it says, hey, you're a computer. This is the kind of computer you are. Let's make sure all your parts are there. RAM, memory, that you've got a monitor, you've got a keyboard, you got a hard drive. Okay, there's your hard drive. Now go ahead and load in your operating system, which in this case is Windows, right? Once Windows takes over, the BIOS's job is done. Okay, it literally just makes the computer understand what's going on so it can get you booted up and into Windows. So skip over to this one right here. So this is pointing down to like these slots right here. What are those? Expansion slots. Now, anybody find like ISA slots or EIDE slots or AGP slots? So those are actually just different kinds of expansion slots, different versions. They're not wrong answers, but expansion slots, it pretty much covers them all. And here's the deal with expansion slots. For the most part, an Apple computer won't have these. These are basically IBM style computers. And this goes back to our computer history. Okay? The company IBM back in the day was the only other company making computers. So they decided back in the day, like long before you and long before me, okay, they decided, or long before I was using computers, that this style of computer should be modular. The reason why they did that was they were catering to a business community. Now, if you're in business, do you want to buy a computer right out of the factory with all of the most expensive bells and whistles already in it? Or do you want to buy a cheap version and then build it to be exactly what you need it to be? See what I mean? So Apple took one stance. They sell computers that have the top of the line, everything in them. Whether you need that or not, you're still paying for it. Okay? But this IBM originally, and all the companies that follow them with the Windows style machines, they decided to make it modular. So if you bought a computer and it doesn't do exactly what you want it to do, you can add cards to these expansion slots. They call them expansion cards. If you, for instance, are a gamer, what's like the first thing you're going to try to make better? The first expansion card you're going to put in there? Definitely the graphics card. Because the computer in front of you, you can see stuff on the screen, right? But for a gamer, it would not be enough, okay? But here's the thing. If you don't need an awesome graphics card, would you want to pay for one? How much does a standard, like, decent gaming graphics card cost? Does anybody know? A couple $100 for a decent one, but top of the line is, yeah, $600 to $1,200, depending on how old, how long it's been out. So if you don't need that, why would you want to pay for it? That's the point with this whole expandability thing. But like I said, Apple and Macintosh, like computers, they took the other stance that you should just pay for a good machine and have one that'll do whatever you want it to do, even though it costs you more. Okay? The second card a gamer would put in here, after you get your graphics under control, so your first-person shooters run nice and smooth, full color, shadows, the whole 9 yards, definitely a sound card. Because even though, like the computer in front of you, once again, so the computer in front of you costs $500. Okay, as far as computers go, that's not much, right? But it'll make sound. The computer in front of you will make sound. But if you want like 7.1 surround sound subwoofer, like shake the house down kind of, sound, these computers in front of you can't do that at all. But if that's what you want, you add a sound card. And this, any of these, they could be anything. There are hundreds of different expansion cards you can put in here. You could put in one that hooks you up to HDMI so you can connect to a television. You can grab one, if your computer doesn't have Wi-Fi built in, you can get a Wi-Fi card. You can get a Bluetooth card. Sometimes even the Bluetooth cards and the Wi-Fi cards are the same card sometimes. Could be a network interface card. Could be, if you don't want extra USB ports, you could put extra USB ports in there. You can even get specialty expansion cards that like allow you to hook your computer up to, robotics or manufacturing equipment, CNC equipment, that kind of stuff. So could be anything. Like literally these cards, you can get a card to put in your computer that does just about anything you can imagine. So, questions about that at all? Hopefully some people found some new answers for that.